In this case, it's a parking lot.
Yes, and if you look just to the right, that bluish thing Tom is talking about is about halfway between top and bottom and slightly to the right. And if you look to the right of it, you can see the shadows of cars. So
yeah,
this is
pretty big.
It's big. It's not incredibly huge, but it's big. Okay, Vermont's largest solar canopy, Encore Renewable Energy's 156 kilowatt solar canopy in Burlington, has begun
Which
producing.
Isn't that big?
No, it's not. It's not incredibly big. This is about a 20th or so of the size of the array that Brattleboro has at the
former dump.
At the former dump, yeah. It has begun producing electricity at the Echo Leahy Center for Lake Champlain. Built in 2003, the Science and Nature Center was the first LEED certified building in Vermont.
Well, this power system's interesting.
Yep.
Because the panels are two-sided.
Yes.
Okay, they're getting power from the sun and getting power from the reflection off the whatever the heck is underneath it.
Yes.
It's roughly 10,000 square feet of two-sided solar panels to capture direct sunlight and reflected light from nearby surfaces like the parking lot, the lake surface, and parked vehicles.
Yeah.
And the manufacturers claim 10 to 30% average increase from the reflected light. So they're getting
it's
something
significant. Those double-sided solar panels do cost more, and they've been kind of waiting in the wings. The technology's been there for a long time.
Well, it's borderline whether they really pay for themselves or not.
Depending upon the situation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we are up to Sunday, January 20th, and we have an item here from Al Bawaba, and it has a picture, which I think is a very interesting picture. And we will see another picture like this later in the photograph.
That's the picture.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're ahead of me here.
Yes, no, I didn't jump ahead of you. You just didn't move away from the last
I didn't move quick
picture.
enough.
So when I put that up, it went straight up.
Oh, we got one coming up in between.
Oh, do we?
Yeah, we do.
Ah, you're right. Okay, this is from Inside Climate News.
So we'll get you up there instead of that thing, and we'll save that for the next one.
Folks, forget that we showed you that picture.
Coal ash is contaminating groundwater in at least 22 states, utility reports show.
Coal ash?
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk?
I wouldn't have, no.
Well, if you'd asked me, I would have said, yeah, that sounds like it could happen.
But
it's not something that had crossed my mind. A clear picture of coal ash contamination in the U.S. is emerging as utilities report serious groundwater contamination in at least 22 states. In many cases, immediate environmental action has been required, and in several states, and there are several states that are moving on this.
Well, the article has a map in there, and it shows that this is concentrated in the West Central, Midwest, and South.
Yes.
Okay, where there's still a lot of coal burning.
Yes.
Power generation.
Right. When the water can get into the coal ash, and coal, if you're going to burn a lot of coal, you're going to have a lot of ash. And these ash piles are huge, and when water gets into them, it seeps through.
It leaches out all sorts of bad stuff, and it gets into the groundwater.
Yeah, and among the bad stuff that it leaches out are mercury compounds and arsenic compounds. And where do they go? They go into the groundwater, which means that nearby people are getting them in their own private wells.
However, the Trump administration is pushing to roll back federal rules.
Well, of course.
For managing and cleaning up contamination from the billions of tons of coal-burning waste that have piled up across the country.
Billions.
They've been saving them rather than throwing them away because it's cheaper.
Yeah. Well, you know what cinder block is?
Yeah.
That's made out of ash.
It is, sure. Yeah. That's why they call it cinder blocks. Cinders are another word for ashes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, well, we got that picture
the picture from Al Bawaba.
Al Bawaba. Say it again. Al Bawaba.
Sounds like a name that you would have heard on the Flintstones or one of those cartoons.
Well, it's Arabic. Al means the, of course.
Yes.
The Bawaba, whatever the Bawaba is.
I don't know.
Well, it got into Iran somehow, which doesn't speak Arabic, but that's okay.
Well, we were talking before the show about the fact that the Iranian language is called Farsi in the United States, and the reason it's called Farsi is because in Iran it's Parsi, and the Arabs don't have a P, so they use an F sometimes. And so we're trying to be ethnically correct, and we're using a word that is a name that comes from Arabic instead of a word that comes from the Iranian language of Parsi.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Iran is to construct 3,000 new small-scale solar plants in rural areas. And this is typical of what they're doing, although it may not be in Iran.
This picture, you know, Tom and I also looked at this picture and we thought, I wonder if that's in Iran. The person on the right of the screen there is dark, and darker than any Iranian I've seen. That picture might have come from Arabia, or it might have come from Africa. It's possible it came from Iran, but I don't know. Anyway, Iran's deputy energy minister said 3,000 new small-scale solar plants are going to be constructed in the country's underprivileged and rural areas by the end of the current Iranian calendar year, and that year ends on March 20th,
That's
2019.
Quickly,
That's quick. Yeah. That's only a couple of months from now. He said this adds to 2,000 plants already operating. Now,
so these things are popping up all over
the place. There's two of them in the picture there that I can see. There's one which is obvious in the foreground, and then just to the left of that, there's one farther away. And there's a couple of things about these that I find interesting. One of them is that's a tracking system. That's not a simple just kind of pop them up and let them go.
It follows the sun.
It follows the sun in order to maximize the production returns. But another thing is, because it's a tracking system, you can get more energy out of it than you would out of fixed, which means that the shade that it throws is less.
The shade moves around.
The shade moves around, and it's less than it would be for a system that would produce the same amount of power. And this system happens to be in a garden.
Makes sense to me. Well, they're talking about reaching 1,000 megawatts by this year, which, as we already said, ends in March.
Yeah. So they're moving on this, and what they're trying to do is make sure that people in rural areas and underprivileged people and people who don't have electricity are getting power that they can use to.
Well, in places like India and Iran, stuff like that, where there's so many people for so long have never had electricity at all, it makes more sense to decentralize the electricity, generate it yourself, than building these huge plants and transmission lines.
That's true in almost every place in Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's happening.
Yeah, and it's happening. And anyway, so our next item is from ABC News. We're still on January 20th, Sunday.
Aha. Frustration over feed-in tariff pushes Tasmanian solar producers towards batteries. And for those who don't remember, Tasmania is not a country, it's a state in Australia. And it's the island south of Australia.
Yeah, it's south of Australia, which means that it's colder than the rest of Australia. It has
more temperate.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, well, I'll just read this. There are about 28,500 Tasmanians with home PV systems. Over half of them installed their PVs before September 2013, when the feed-in tariff was about 28 cents per kilowatt hour.
That's pretty generous.
This is Australian.
Yeah.
So the Australian dollar
is a little bit less.
A tiny bit less than 3/4 of the American dollar in value. So this is probably about 20 or 21 cents.
Yeah, but now you're going to drop the other shoe.
Yeah. Now that the FIT is dropping to 8.5 cents per kilowatt hour, by which we mean maybe 6 cents per kilowatt hour, many of these people are getting batteries.
Instead of feeding into the grid.
Yeah, absolutely, because they're not getting.
It's not enough of an incentive.
It's not an incentive for the grid.
And the articles indicates these people are rather upset about it.
These people are very upset about it. It's something that we talked about in the past.
Yes, we have.
And, you know, we were saying, when you get to a point, and it's happening in the United States in places too, when you get to a point where the utility prices are too high and the incentives to put solar on the grid are too low, you're going to have people who are putting in solar get batteries and just get off the grid.
Well, you're seeing things like this happening in Vermont for slightly different reasons.
Yes.
You buy a piece of country land that's not connected to the grid. The cost of connecting it to the grid is enormous.
Yeah.
You know, they got to run these poles and all of that, and it's very costly. It's a heck of a lot cheaper, and this is happening.
Yes.
To buy the solar panels and put up your own system.
Right.
I know several people who are doing exactly that.
Nancy Ray Mallory, who is the editor of Green Energy Times, which I write for.
Sort of your boss in a way, huh?
She's my boss. Have you met Nancy Ray?
I don't think so.
I think you did once.
It's possible.
Yeah. She's a very pretty woman.
Uh-huh.
She was the first runner-up in the Miss Harley Davidson World Contest in 1983. But anyway, when she built her house where she is now, she had a choice of putting in a solar and battery system. This was quite a few years ago, or putting in grid power, and she chose the solar and battery system for reasons she would have preferred that anyway, but
the economics were there.
Economics were strongly in favor of going solar and battery instead of going to grid power. Since that time, the cost of grid power has gone up. The cost of solar and battery has gone down. So
it's even more compelling.
It's even more compelling. A couple of telephone poles costs as much as the battery system when you're putting in a.
Oh, sure.
You know.
I've known people who have lived without electricity because they couldn't afford to bring it in.
I've known people who, you know, my landlady, who has lived for years in Guilford off grid, and nobody on her road had grid electric power because it was so expensive.
They turn on a generator for a couple of hours a day.
The ones who had power were using solar. She was using solar power and batteries, and you know she's pretty frugal, so she didn't need a big system. Anyway, we are up to Monday, January 21st.
Well,
with
this
an
is
item.
interesting. We got a picture coming up.
We do indeed.
Too.
We have an item from the San Francisco Examiner.
And there's a little deja vu, I think, from last week.
Deja vu again?
All over again, yeah. This is a reservoir.
Yes.
Okay, with solar panels on it.
Yes.
And we mentioned last week that this is a win-win situation.
Yes.
So San Francisco moves toward public power and a local version of a Green New Deal.
Now, the Green New Deal.
Where did I ever hear that before?
Yeah, right. The Green New Deal is coming up more and more and more.
Yeah.
Congress didn't give Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez what she wanted.
They will.
They will. Because what's happening is the states and the cities are adopting the Green New Deal. Okay.
Well, Cuomo's got his own Green New Deal.
We're going to get to that.
And we talked about it already.
San Francisco's push to move to a public power system after PG&E said it will file for bankruptcy is not the only big energy plan in the making. Supporters of the city's renewable energy program are calling for the city's own, quote, local version of a Green New Deal, end quote.
Well, you glossed over this public power system quickly, and that's interesting because PGE is a private company.
Yes.
And the public power system would be owned by the city of San Francisco.
Yes.
So this is a large departure.
Well, you know, since I was in college,
it's socialism.
And I was well, I had had friends who believed that a public park is socialist.
Yeah.
It had to be avoided. We should have that park be regulated, you know, maintained by a private
turnstile
organization.
on the way in.
Yeah, and our prisons and our police should be privatized, and our roads
well, there are
should
people who believe in it. If somebody's not making money on it, it ain't worth doing.
Well, yeah.
That's kind of an axiom among some Republicans.
It is, and the farther I see us going down the road that I'm going, the more convinced I am that a free market is a wonderful idea if it operates.
If it's free.
Well, if it operates on the basis of
freedom,
simple regulation to make sure that people are not being cheated.
Yeah.
Because what they're asking for is no regulation to guarantee that people are not being cheated, and you know, simple regulation all of a sudden gets really complicated when you try to get it done in reality. And so I'm beginning to think that the free market that they're talking about is not even worth thought.
Well, it's really not free.
It's not. The free market is an excuse to bolster the people who dominate whatever market it is you're talking about.
That's true.
And well, so, you know.
Well, let's move along on this one, because this is kind of interesting.
The one from China?
Yeah, there's a group in San Francisco called Clean Power SF.
Okay.
Well, it's the government. It's part of the government.
Yeah.
It's a San Francisco program to significantly increase the proportion of local energy, of electrical energy from local renewable sources.
Yes.
Decrease greenhouse gas emissions and help combat climate change.
Yes.
They support an aggressive build-out of local renewable energy projects, such as what we see here in the picture, and I'll bring it up again.
Yes.
The Sunset Reservoir solar energy panels.
Right.
And we mentioned that there's a lot of side benefits, like it cuts down evaporation.
Oh yeah, and keeps the panels cool, so that they're operating at the
so they operate a little bit better,
more efficient.
So it's a kind of a win-win situation here, and for the most part, reservoirs are rather wasted. I mean, you know, you can't fish in them, you can't swim in them, you can look at them, and if they could figure out how to charge you to look at them, they would do that.
Well, one of the things about the free market is that I fail to see where the free market has any reason to protect the environment.
They don't really, yeah.
Which is why the environment is in such trouble, because we've got people who are saying that we need a free market, I'm going to say in quotes, free market.
Yeah.
And what they're looking for is, in fact, a market that can be dominated by a group of people who have got enough money to buy themselves a Congress or two and a president or two.
They wouldn't do that.
Well, they've done it. You know, I really deeply resent the takeover by people who say they are American presidents, patriots, and say that they are conservatives, who have absolutely no. They don't protect the democracy. They don't protect the United States. They don't protect the principles of conservatism. I voted for the man in the last election who was closest in his principles to Theodore Roosevelt.
Yes, you did.
And that man is a socialist. Bernie Sanders.
That's very interesting, really.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
It really is.
Well,
okay,
let's move along here.
If they're going to complain about socialists because people advocated government ownership of something, they got to throw out, along with all the other socialists, Benjamin Franklin and Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt, you know, and just go down the list.
Well, we got highways, that's socialism.
Yeah, absolutely, it's terrible.
State, we got parks, you know.
And you know, where did the term communism come from, or commune? Where were the first communes?
I don't know. Where were they?
When were they? Middle Ages,
a long time ago.
Italy.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, what is it? Commons? Well, the commons is the place where all the people, in a more or less democratic manner, can graze their cattle.
That's what they did.
But it has nothing to do with socialism, and they've taken the term socialism and
it became a bad word.
It's a label that they put on things in order to support the economic ends, short-term economic ends. All right, I should get off of this and talk about energy. We have an item here from the Durango Herald. Is that what's next, or is it from?
It's
from
the Maritime Executive, and we don't have a picture. That's
we do not have a picture, right?
Okay, China approves 24 offshore wind projects.
The Chinese government approved 24 offshore wind projects off the coast of Jiangsu Province.
Wherever the heck that is.
Province, wherever the heck that is. Well, my guess is that it's on the ocean. Local media reports that the projects have a total capacity of 6.7 gigawatts.
That's significant.
That's significant, and will involve an investment of $18 billion, just to put a price on the significance of it. The wind farms are expected to be operational by the end of 2020. If this was a nuclear power plant, they would say it's going to be operational by 2030, and they'd be off by 10 years. It would be operational by 2040, or maybe not at all.
Maybe not at all. Well, a quick takeaway here. China was responsible for almost half of the world's $25 billion investment in offshore wind last year.
Yeah.
So they're getting onto this.
They're buying half the electric vehicles. They're buying 95%, building 95% of the electric buses.
But they're a communist country.
I don't know.
They are also boosting pump storage capacity to facilitate the integration of renewable energy into its electricity grid.
And they are taking the position of world leadership that the United States walked away from.
Relinquishing. Yes. Unfortunately.
And I don't see how you can argue for or against that. That's just a matter of, all right, there was
that's reality.
Paris Climate Agreement, and we just said we're leaving
that's reality.
It, and we're the only country that is.
Well,
okay.
Let's move along here. We got a picture coming up.
We have a picture from the Durango Herald.
And I will try and get that up. And there it is. And it is some